Hopefully my head will be in the way. Sit right here.
Check one, check two. All right, welcome again. Welcome again. Can we get a hurrah or something out there, a collective chant? What's something we can say together?
One God, one aim, one destiny.
Perfect. One God, one aim, one destiny. Let's go.
One God, one aim, one destiny.
Perfect. That's a beautiful way to start out this program. And of course, asking permission from the elders and the ancestors to speak.
Very well.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Michaela. I want to welcome you all to Sankofa. It's so nice to see some familiar faces that I haven't seen in a while. I hope to see y'all more often. I just want to also give thanks to the cafe and thanks to Sankofa staff for making this possible. Yes, because we need everyone. We need the community as well. So thank you for being here. It's my pleasure to welcome you to Sankofa and to welcome you to this event, Black August Organizing for Global Sovereignty. We're here with Baba Sam, or Brother Sam, Baba Kokai, and Sister Sheila Brown. And I'm not going to stand up here for too long. I'm going to pass the mic over to Brother Sam. Thank you so much for organizing this. A round of applause for Brother Sam, please.
Yeah.
Let's give Sis Michaela a hand, family. Let's give some hope. Being a top-notch institution, we need a lot of institutions. At this point, it's about institution building and really building upon what our ancestors have given us and laid down for us. Like Sis Michaela said, my name is Brother Sam P.K. Collins. I also go by Ross Ploquia Glebwo, Baba Ploquia for those who I teach. And we're here to commemorate Black August. Black August is an important month. We will go into more detail about it, but the commemoration came out of the California State Penitentiary in the early 1970s. So if you know about George Jackson, the Soledad Brothers, then you pretty much know about Black August. You also know about the Haitian Revolution. You know a lot about times when we went into hand-to-hand physical combat with those who were trying to oppress us and down-press us. But today is a very powerful day, or this week rather, is a very powerful week because today we commemorate the 136th birth anniversary of the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey. So we got to give a hand to that for our noble ancestors. And not only do we commemorate his birth anniversary, we also commemorate August 13th, which is the 103rd anniversary of the red, black, and green flag. So we got to give a hand up to that, y'all. The red, black, and green flag. And if you know the history of that flag, then you know that flag was created out of a need for sovereignty, because only with a flag and with a nation, with a national consciousness, a nation-building consciousness, will we have our sovereignty. That is where our sovereignty starts. So a lot of Black August is about sovereignty, and sovereignty means the control of every aspect of your existence. And we are close to that, but we are not there right now. I want y'all to say the word neo-colonialism.
Neo-colonialism.
One more word, neo-colonialism.
Neo-colonialism.
All right, so that is the next stage of imperialism, as said by Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah. It is a hurdle that we have to overcome in order to be sovereign. And as much as it's happening to us behind enemy lines here in the United States, there's just as much happening or worse happening all around the world, especially in Mama Africa. And if Mama Africa is not free, then none of us are free. So we gotta free Mama Africa, and that is what tonight's event's about. I'm talking to y'all tonight on behalf of the Pan-African Federalist Movement of North America. The PAFM of North America is one part of a global movement for global African sovereignty. I want y'all to say United African States.
United African States.
One more time, United African States.
United African States.
All right, so tonight we're going to have Baba Kokai come up, and then we're going to have Mama Sheila come up, of course, But before then, what I want to do is I want to read an excerpt from my book just to get us in the right mood. And I want to make a short presentation to y'all as an appeal for us to continue campaigning for United African States. How many of y'all here are part of an organization? Raise your hand. If you build an organization, name your organizations, family. Name them out loud. All right, here. And Cobra, ADS. UNIA, yes, sir. AY, okay. Who else? Black Knowledge Coalition. Go ahead. Uhuru Movement. All right, so.
Black Acupuncture Association in North America.
There you go.
Million Women World March.
There you go. Other organizations.
All African People Revolutionary Party.
Yes, sir. There you go. Yeah. So while we're not coalition building, we all do similar work. We all work in different aspects of liberation. Why are we not coalition building? All right. The PAFM is not an organization. It's a coalition. By working with the PAFM, by no means are you required to relinquish what you're doing. It is a coalition. And that coalition is around the United African States. So you are highly encouraged tonight to continue building with us and to continue working alongside us. We have a sign-in sheet that's going to be circulated very shortly. And I just want to acknowledge Brother Amir in the back right there. That's a good brother right there. What's your organization?
The Nation of Melanin.
Nation of Melanin. There you go. All right. So he's also building with us in the P. I want to turn you guys' attention to my book, Babylon Be Still. Shameless plug. I just wanted to read something out of it, just to give y'all an idea of what exactly it is that we should be fighting for, or we should be marching toward. This is on page 285. If you purchase the book from St. Kofi, you'll see that there's a lot of margin space for you, and it's double space. Good material, good study material, right? Because the idea is that not only do you read the book, you want to annotate, and you want to analyze what you read and figure out how it applies to your life. So I'm going to read from page 285 and give you guys an idea exactly about what I'm talking about. August 2020 marked the century since the Universal Negro Improvement Association African Communities League, also known as the UNIA ACL, designated the red, black, and green flag as the banner under which global African nationhood would be established. The Declaration of the Rights of the Negro People of the World, a document compiled during the UNIA ACL's historic convention at Madison Square Garden, mentions societal ills, structural inequality, and race-based slights affecting Black people of African descent. Even with strides in the attainment of civil rights, political representation, and more economic opportunities than granted to our ancestors, the majority of Black people in the U.S. have been relegated to the status of a permanent underclass in a hyper-capitalistic society on the verge of extinction. As Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. bemoaned toward the end of his life, our people have been integrated into a burning house, in part because of a focus on civil rights that didn't address the totality of the human rights struggle that to this day places Black people in the U.S. in solidarity with other people across the world. Once integrated into the U.S. political and social structure, Black people, a race without a common consciousness, lost the potency needed to counter attacks like that waged by capitalist overlords and their Black allies in government and business. In the latest stage of the African liberation struggle, those on the front lines must combat class schisms and the aggregate disconnect between our brothers and sisters that has in part precipitated the breakdown of families and communities. Now, more than ever, African people need a global government with a foundation in communal African principles and the ability to meet the basic needs of the oppressed masses, the victims, direct and otherwise, of the deindustrialization of the 1970s, the so-called war on drugs during the 1980s and 1990s, the shift of jobs abroad by major corporations and business entities, and last but not least, the gentrification that helped destroy majority Black economic centers during the 2000s. Our main issues as African people currently concern our lack of organization and consolidation and our identification with imperialist governments that wreak havoc on people of African descent globally. The rise of so-called white nationalism and subsequent nationalistic movements among segments of the African diaspora further confuses us as a people. All the while, African-centered nation-building institutions, to an extent, remain in the margins, only helping those who are familiar heirs to a legacy of Pan-African revolution and other members of their networks. I say that as someone who has just come to know and understand DC's conscious community, quote unquote, as a hodgepodge of various social political organizations, spiritual societies, independent schools, businesses, and other institutions working in the collective interest of African people. Despite our common goals, members of some of these organizations often become mired in power struggles that impede our ability to appeal to an up-and-coming generation of rebels, enduring conditions unlike that which we have never seen before. And I'll stop there, family. That's what I got for y'all tonight. That's what I got for y'all. Feel free to purchase the book. But more so than selling the book, it's about selling the message or conveying a message rather about Pan-African global sovereignty. And it's about us, once again, forming coalitions, uniting around a common cause. Once again, you don't got to give up your mission in order to join the coalition. It's never about that. We've never been an individualistic people. We've always been a people who have been collective. And class never mattered to an extent in African societies. That's Babylon talk right there. All right, we got to give that up. And we got to revert to that. So in making that point, I just want to make a brief presentation before I bring on Baba Kokai and Mama Sheila, because tonight you guys are in for a treat. Baba Kokai is going to talk about Black August, and Mama Sheila is going to take us home by talking about Amy Jocks Garvey and what the Alpha and Omega energy mean for Pan-African sovereignty. So we definitely going to get into that, y'all. Let's get a hand, y'all. Come on, y'all. Give that energy, y'all. Kwame, if you wouldn't mind going to the back for me. Let's give a shout out to Kwame. Kwame, hold me down for tonight, the youngest. You gotta bring the youth on. You gotta bring the youth with you wherever you go. For real. Right. Seriously. Right. All right, so the presentation tonight, the short presentation, is likely I won't go through this whole thing. We'll just touch the important parts. But it's called Africa, Unite or Perish. The case for Pan-African federalism. All right, so this is a very, very simple concept. Let's go to the next slide. All right, so this presentation will focus on the benefits of the diaspora uniting under one central government. This is a concept that, scares a lot of people. If it doesn't scare them, it makes them think that like it's impossible because Africa has so many different cultures and dialects and different ethnicities. How can we all unite? And it's much easier than what you think, because historically we've had federations. The United States is a federation, a system just like the Greeks and the Romans that they built off of African societies. Right. So we were united to an extent. We all came from one part of Africa and migrated, so we all can unite as one once again. All right, it's very easy. Not easy, but it's possible. All right. Pan-African federalism explained. Let's go to the next slide. All right, so Pan-Africanism pretty much is about the political, economic, and social unification of Africa. If you want to talk about Black nationalism, that is us here in America or the United States identifying as a nation within a nation. Pan-Africanism is the global expression of Black nationalism. So if you're Black, you're African, like Peter Tosh said, right? And you go all around the globe, we all identify as Africans, with Africa being our home. Because what did Garvey say? Africa for the Africans, those at home. All right, bet. Okay. All right, federalism is a system of government in which states and provinces share power with the central power. All right, and you have smaller governments. And it also limits the abuse of leaders of independent nations. Let me take you to the U.S. real quick. The U.S. was 13 individual colonies. They all had different currencies at one point, but they united as a federation to do what? To keep outside powers from coming in and dividing and conquering. Kwame Nkrumah wanted to do that during the independence movements, but unluckily, Liberia the United States through Liberia stopped that. So today, all you have is 50 some odd independent African countries that are getting picked off one by one, instead of being united, where we can just get rid of all of that. Next slide. So federalism, it means one currency, interstate commerce, increased communications, all right? Diplomacy, interdependence on military forces, a single African identity, all right? Single in the sense that as a unit, we move as a unit, but we're still diversified inside, and we respect our diversity while understanding that that diversity has some similarities, because African people did what? They migrated from place to place, and as they migrated, languages changed a little bit. You see what I'm saying? Cultures changed a little bit, but there's always a source. Next slide, y'all. Kwame Nkrumah, Sergeant Kwame Nkrumah. You put Pan-African, you put federalism together. Pan-African is the ideology. Federalism is the how. Because oftentimes we don't talk about the how enough. We often disagree about that. We got people talking about, well, you know, I believe in this ism and this ism. Federalism, even though I don't believe in isms, but federalism is the closest that we can get as politically unified as a people. And it all starts locally. So the question is, what coalitions are y'all building? Are we building, rather? Right? How many of y'all can say that you are talking to somebody who you haven't talked to before, and you guys are working on a common project? Because if you're not, the PAFM is a possibility for y'all to do. And like I said, you don't got to give up what you're doing in order to join the coalition. Why Pan-African federalism? We're supporting Africans in the diaspora, and we're quelling conflicts. So imagine everything that's going on right now between Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali, Guinea, and ECOWAS. If we had Pan-African federalism, to an extent, that would already be quelled, because it'd be Africans among Africans. And to an extent, no outside influence trying to take advantage of our resources. That's what Pan-Africanism, that's what Pan-African federalism ideologically is supposed to prevent. Imperialism and neocolonialism. All right, next slide. For those of us in America, the United States, you got your other national and ethnic groups, whenever something happens to them, and this is true, they got home governments backing them up. Where's our home government backing us up? And people might ask, right, well, they never did none for us, was because to an extent they couldn't, because they are controlled by outside powers. We'll skip this. Skip this. Skip this.
Take your time, King.
Now, I want to get to y'all. I got y'all. All right, so AFRICOM. We got to get rid of AFRICOM. All right. AFRICOM has a presence in most of the African nations. They're training African soldiers. Now, idealistically, once they train them, they want them to fight on behalf of their interests. But as was seen in Niger, one of those trained soldiers actually went on ahead and toppled a French-ran government, a French-controlled government. All right, but at the very same time, it's getting to a point now where you have Republicans in Congress asking U.S. military officials, well, what's going on? Like, they're not meeting our goals. This has happened time and time again. It's happened in Liberia. It's happened in Uganda. It's happened in Kenya. Ask Obama's father, because Obama's father was in there toppling stuff too. All right. It's happened all over the continent. You even have NATO. Okay. You have the UN Security Council made up of the countries that won World War II. They're the ones dictating policy on our backs. Skip the slide right here. Multinational corporations. This is the new age slavery. As a matter of fact, this speaks to what Chairman Huey P. Newton talked about when he talked about intercommunalism. How many of y'all know about that? Intercommunalism, right? Now, I'm still a nationalist at heart, but I can understand what he meant by when he said that no longer do they control you from one base. They can control you from anywhere in the world, and they use multinational corporations. So they come in, they make you sign deals, right? And then from there, they take your resources. So whenever the U.S. is talking about democracy, it's not about making sure that they have somebody in there that'll treat the people well. It's about having a puppet in there who's going to sign off the resources to the multinational corporations while the people are suffering. That's what neocolonialism is about. Ensuring that even though you're nominally free, you can't control your own resources. So anytime the US or France or Britain is talking about democracy, they're talking about allowing somebody in there to control our resources. So the iPhones that we use, the clothes that we got, they all come from the raw resources that were taken out of our will and brought outside to be produced. Next slide. Next slide. Chinese investments. This might turn some of y'all off, but it's the truth though. It's the truth. Because right now we got proxy wars going on. A lot of African nations, especially the ones that don't like the US and France, they're looking at China and they're looking at Russia for help. But the question is, when are Africans going to start doing for Africans? When are Africans going to start solving their own problems? And can we depend on Africans to look beyond their internal squabbles to understand that we're all in a proxy war? That's the question that we got to answer. Next slide. Zionism. Zionism. Israel is in Africa heavy. Israel is in Africa heavy, all right? So when I'm talking about certain powers, we're talking about people who are united, who have a common interest. Their common interest being subjugating Africa. And Zionism is a concept that was built in the post-World War II era, right? When France and Britain, once again, they took, those who were in the Holocaust and brought them to a land that was not theirs to begin with, all right? So when we talk about Zionism, we're not talking about anti-Semitism because those are two different concepts. We're not anti-Semites, we are anti-Zionists, as the late Kwame Ture said, fighting Zionism, because Zionism itself is an extension of colonialism, because by the very fact that you have people coming into a country and taking it over from the majority and having it ran by a minority that has imposed its will on those people. So who's supporting Zionists? People in the Congressional Black Caucus. I'm sorry to say it. My good man's nephew, I ain't gonna say his name, but my man out of New York, he supports Zionists. I ain't gonna say his name, do your research. All right, but he's part of the CBC. He's the highest ranking Democrat in the House right now. Last name Jeffries. All right. Okay. All right.
Told the man job, his name, what?
What's his address?
So PAFM. So before I wrap this up, because I do want to give our guests the floor. So back in May, so right now the PAFM in North America is composed of different coordinating committees out of DC, Baltimore, and New York, as well as Atlanta and Florida. DC, Baltimore, and New York have youth committees, and those youth committees, we all met in Harlem in May on Malcolm X's birth weekend. And we organized among ourselves to develop a resolution. This resolution, we looked at aspects of the African youth existence in arts, health, youth elder relations, security and preparedness, spirituality, among other facets. And we developed a whole resolution. The resolution was stating what were problems that young people were facing in these areas, and how can a united African states help? Because we keep attacking symptoms of the problem, except we keep attacking symptoms and never attacking the problem. And the problem is our lack of global sovereignty. Say it with me. Our lack of global sovereignty. And we get sovereignty by consolidating and being on one common page about who we are and how we organize politically. Now, how that government will look, whether it's one head of state or it's a council like it was way back before colonialism, that'll be up to us. But first, we got to agree to be united as one government. This is a vision that was articulated by the late, great Marcus Messiah Garvey when he became the provisional president of Africa in 1920 during that convention up in New York City. So this is a vision that came from Marcus Garvey, Kwame Nkrumah, even Malcolm X, because they got Malcolm X out the way when he started gaining that global consciousness. You hear me? Okay? These are concepts that are not new, but it's up to us as the current generation, those of us still in the land of the living, to manifest, and we do that through organization. Because a people without organization are people who are just not going to go anywhere. That's the fact of the matter. So what I think I'll leave it here by saying is that I have a call to action for y'all. Like I said, I heard a lot of organizations named here tonight. I'm kindly asking that y'all fill out the sign-in sheet. The sign-in sheet will be used by Sankofa staff as well as coordinating members of the PAFM in DC. We want to keep organizing the ideas to build coalitions. All right. We want to hear from y'all. We have meetings. We have a convention scheduled for Malcolm X weekend next year in DC. The first one took place in New York. It'll happen here in DC. We got the youth and the elders coming through with developing resolutions. We're working with our counterparts in Ghana, Kenya, Nigeria, right? And we're forming new committees in Europe and so forth and so on. So this is something that is major, you know, and we need y'all to sign on. And like I said, you don't got to stop doing what you're doing by joining the coalition. All right. Before we move on to the guests tonight, are there any questions or comments from anybody in the audience?
Can you speak? I feel like when people think about nationalism, they have trouble. Well, and not even trouble necessarily. That it's reminiscent of like the Black Belt theory, right, which is Haywood, and also, you know, the New African Independence movement. So, but we have this idea of landmass. So I feel like, you know, descendants of people who were formerly enslaved might feel detached from Pan-Africanism because of the lack of a present existence of a landmass. So can you speak a little bit to the thinking around recognizing yourself as a nation, what it means like politically, economically, or in any other type of sense that you can speak to that?
So you mean as far as the PGRNA?
What is PGRNA? Oh, yes. Well, yeah. Well, not just in that case. I mean, we do have the actual fight for the landmass, which we're seeking to have in the southern United States. But also there's the idea of being a nation of people that are currently abroad. And I feel like, I don't know if me always like continuing to learn about nationalism, recognize that what is meant by being a people and being a nation is something deeper than what it looks like, what the current understanding of a nation is in the current hegemony, the current world order, in terms of these countries, how to capture these land masses. Like, while we move towards that and our version of that, what is the definition of like of our nation and our peoplehood as we fight for like political independence while we are within this large nation?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that, you know, nationhood has gotten more complex in this new age, you know, with technology and with us being even more connected with our counterparts across the globe. So nationhood, you establish nationhood by having a certain cultural identification. You know, if you identify by culture, if you identify by customs, right? So it comes first with finding your identity. And for us in the United States, we, you know, people might say we can't identify as Africans, but we're Africans in everything that we do. And we are a nation within a nation in the very sense that, you know, the United States Constitution didn't even write us as full human beings. So to an extent, that's not even our Constitution. And if you look at the principles upon which the PGRNA are founded, the Emancipation Proclamation, that whole period between the Emancipation Proclamation and the passage of the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment and so on, we were in a quasi-citizenship mode. The U.S. government didn't even ask us if we wanted to be citizens. They didn't hold a form for us, right? A plebiscite. You see what I'm saying? Plebiscite, okay? So by that very notion alone, those of us in the United States are Africans. We're new Africans by virtue of having a common ancestry and a common historical lineage, by virtue of being brought over here by the Ma'afa. And even for those of us who decided to go to Liberia, right? We share that heritage. And just as we have that heritage, we also have a heritage based in colonialism. And then when you look at those types of heritage on this side and that side, you go back and then you find a common heritage. So to answer your question, right? The reason why, and I think I'm answering your question, the reason why people might not find the concept might not be able to grasp it is because when they hear nationalism, they keep being married to the idea of like nation. Whereas nation means that you have to be married to a land. When in fact you have people who immigrate from their homeland, so-called, and they come to the United States, and 20, 40 years, they don't consider themselves American, they still married to their nation. So why can't we be married to our nation? Why can't our nation be a collection of satellite nations all over the world? Because that's who we are by virtue of our experiences. That's why we capitalize the B in black. That's why we use African with a K. And that change in mindset will lead to the creation and support of more independent institutions. Because once again, we are not citizens legally in this country. Because if we were, we wouldn't be fighting for the same things that we were fighting for centuries ago. Mm-hmm. And we got to get to that understanding and overstanding eventually. That nationhood does not mean being relegated to a land. Nationhood is based in culture and common experiences. And African culture permeates all throughout our existence. Our history of rebellion, our hip hop music, our jazz, even the trap music that we listen to, it's a different cadence that comes from Africa. So we got to recognize that, but it's up to us to educate those who are not aware of it. And it takes all hands on deck for that. Thank you. Go ahead, one last question, Bobby.
Yeah, my question is, how did the establishment of the state of Liberia detract the beginning of continental unity in Africa?
Man, we need to go until 9 o'clock for that. Ask the question again, Barbara.
How did the establishment of the state of Liberia detract the beginning of continental unity?
All right. So you got to understand that because Liberia, like my mother and father was from Liberia. My father was a Gribble man from Cape Palmas, that's Maryland County. My mother's from West Point, that's in Monrovia, the capital city. Liberia was an experiment that was formed. It was conceptualized out of Thomas Jefferson's mind. Because you got to understand the Haitian Revolution happened in the early 1800s. The Haitian Revolution happened, and you had slave revolts. They were scared of an uprising happening in the United States. So they said, we got to expel the freed Africans out of here so that they don't cause anybody to think different. So they made Liberia for that very reason. But you got to understand that even with that, and not even go there, Liberia became independent by 1847. But even with that, the U.S. had control because they were installing people who we would call mulattoes, like to be in government. And to an extent, they were consolidating power among themselves and not the natives, right? And then you had Firestone coming. This happened to see Garvey. Garvey had plans to go to Liberia. As a matter of fact, had Garvey's plan went through, people would have repatriated to my father's hometown, Cape Palmas. But W.E.B. Du Bois and President, King of Liberia, they worked with the U.S. government and the French and whoever else to nullify those plans. All right. So Liberia was used as a base, a U.S. base, to control Africans, or it was used as a base at a point when the other countries were dividing up Africa like a piece of pie. So the British, they had their pieces, the French had their pieces, the Belgians, so forth and so on. While Liberia was nominally free, the U.S. still had interest in there, and they were installing people to take out resources and to control, presidents and things like that. So around the time when Kwame Nkrumah was talking about Africans uniting as one, you had William Tubman in there who they was kind of using to say, well, nah, we don't need to unite as one. We need to keep our country separate and just, unite economically. But the kicker about that is that even with him being controlled to an extent, William Tubman, being black-skinned, was wary about uniting with Morocco because Morocco had the Arab influence. So he was like, nah, I ain't trying to build them Arabs over there. You see what I'm saying? But even still though, the United States always used Liberia as a proxy for colonialism on the continent. and they used Liberia as a means of nullifying any revolts here in the United States. But even with that, though, the spirit of Pan-Africanism was always in Liberia, because you had people like my man Martin Delaney, who came through Liberia to go visit. You had Mary McLeod Bethune, who came through to visit. You had Booker T. Washington. They got a whole school name for him out there. You got my man Locke Carey. Locke Carey. You see what I'm saying? He was like a Baptist minister. He went out there, right? And you had folks. There's a whole lot of history. So it's twofold. The U.S. was still controlling Liberia, but beyond that, you have folks who are working outside of the government to advance Pan-Africanism, because up until the 1960s, Liberia was like the only option for real. Liberia and even like Ethiopia, because those were the two nominally independent nations on the African continent. So folks always looked to Liberia, even though it was under U.S. control politically. And not that it was like a colony of the United States, because it was still independent, because the U.S. didn't even recognize Liberia's independence until like 1863, in the middle of the Civil War, for real. You see what I'm saying? But even with that, though, the U.S., came in with some money. Hey, said, y'all got some debts, we'll pay your debts off. Even with that, we're gonna take the resources. You got to do this for us. It was like a military base during World War I and World War II. A lot of geopolitical activity going on through there that really, allowed the U.S. to do its thing. But I'll stop there, though. I hope that answers your question.
That gave me a good idea. I'm gonna say this.
Yeah.
I got one more question real quick.
All right.
How does a lack of global sovereignty affects U.S. policy towards Africans in America or African Americans?
Yeah, that's a good one. All right, so during the U.S.-Africa Summit, here's what y'all got to understand. I'm going to kindly call it Mama Sheila as well, if you don't mind. Well, no, you want? No, it's fine. No,
You understand my question?
I do understand your question. I do understand. I got you. Oftentimes, right? You know what a brain drain is?
Yeah, it's a deep out.
All right. So civil wars is twofold. Civil wars bring a lot of people over here, and that creates the conflict between recent African immigrants and Africans who've been here for centuries, people who may not understand the reasons why it's happening, and it comes up out of that, this whole ADOS stuff. And then with that, you have a division that keeps us from unifying. Now, on the other side of that coin, you have opportunities for the United States to co-opt Pan-Africanism. When I say co-opt, they use the word Pan-Africanism to advance its policies. So last December, the United States, they invited all of these colonies down, all of these countries down here to make trades and stuff like that. And then who did they use to make those trades? They used black faces like us, young black people who they put in State Department offices and in White House positions to make deals. All right, because we lack sovereignty, we often feel the need, those of us who are quote unquote educated, we might feel the need to, and we don't know any better, we might feel the need to work for the White House or whoever else, when in fact, we're advancing the White House's interests in further colonizing Africa, right? And so then one more point is that right now you got US and Russia, they're going toe to toe on the continent. And there's there's not a lack of resources, but it's that because to a certain extent, I will argue that certain nations are getting played. It's not just the U.S. playing them. You got Russia via the Wagner Group. You don't know what the Wagner Group?
Yeah.
The Wagner, yeah, paramilitary forces in Russia. So this is like a Russian shadow army. They go into African countries and they work. And so in Mali they killed about 500 people. They were fighting for Malian people against other Malian people. See what I'm saying? And they're doing the same thing, or they're about to do the same thing, if I recall correctly, in Nigeria. So we have an issue with not solving our own problems. That's the overall problem. We don't solve our own problems because, just the history of colonialism that we got to overcome.
Africans here don't realize that the continent is their home.
Now, some of them do, because you have year returns. But even with that, tourism ain't gonna save Africa. You gotta build institutions.
Because we have so many people going over there with this mindset.
Exactly.
And
Exactly. They going over there thinking, oh, it's cheaper to live, or I can do this and that over there.
partnering with the people that are trying to.
Exactly. We can talk after. I'm gonna let Bobby go. Much love, Bobby. I respect you.
Hey.
All right, let's give Bobby Kokai a hand, family, please. Let's bring him on stage. Yeah, this is what y'all was waiting on. This is what y'all was waiting for, man. About to have a real Black August conversation. So, I've known Bobby Kokai for some years now. I actually met him at a service for the late Dr. Francis Cress Welsing back in 2016, early 2016 or so. So, since then, we've been building, time to time. I had the privilege of speaking with him and some of his comrades around the time that the late Dr. Mutulu Shakur was released from the prison system back last year. And I brought you here, Bobby, because you have a real knowledge of Black August. You being there, you being in the trenches. If you can just break down the concept to us. And just tell us, like, what has been your experience with Black August, just being in the midst of, that time period among, those who were fighting for our sovereignty?
Whoa, good evening, everybody.
Hey.
I really don't. But how's everybody?
Excellent.
Everybody down for revolution? That's the question, because when I start talking, I'm just going to assume that y'all ready to rumble a little bit and that y'all just came for some instructions. Y'all just came for some information. You came for some insights. You came for some affirmation. You came for some backup, you know what I mean, and some support. That's what this is about. This is why I support this man, and love what he does. And my phone, it says, Love Sam, Progressive Newsman. That's what's in my phone. So if you look and you see his name, you say, oh, okay, he cool. I can talk to him, So again, in my phone, there's notes besides Sheila's name too, and anybody who is involved, in the movement that's, about doing something, we have to be able to identify him. You heard him talking about that. We have to be able to identify who it is that we're working with. So before I get to talking, let me first say thank you, Father. Give me, blessings and clarity to talk tonight. Please forgive me of my sins and guide and direct me so that I can continue to do our work. Thank you so much. I always got to put that honor out there and make sure I let them know. I know they covered my butt, throughout all these years, and kept me alive. So, so again, we want to thank Sam. Give him a hand. Give him a black hand. Give him a black order. Give him a black order. Okay, so 3 things I want you guys to write down real quick before I get into what he's talking about. Banner, BAANA.com. That stands for the Black Acupuncturist Advisory Association in North America, that Dr. Mutulu Shakur started in '79, that myself and 2 or 3 other people have reinstated. The next one is CEHA, Communal Effect Herbals Aloe World. CommunalEffectHerbals.com is what you want to look at. CommunalEffectHerbals.com. There, you're able to get your survival kits, when we talk about health and we talk about issues that are going on in our community. The other website is the ADScollective.org. ADS Collective members, would y'all please stand up? The people who are ADS, Ahmed's in the back, Samir's over there. These are all acupuncture students and acupuncture mama is one of the people who helped me found the mentally part of that project. In 1998, we founded this ADS collective, this acupuncture detox specialist collective. Dr. Africa was in my first class. Dr. Layla Africa, my best friend, who is an ancestor, straight shot warrior. Okay, if y'all know Dr. Africa, he's a mean dude. Okay, you know, so he was very clear about what it is that we have to do for Black people. Same thing with Dr. Saban, who I met in '78 when my son had cancer, and we were able to cure the cancer back in 1978. So Dr. Africa, Dick Gregory, who I met in '73, who became a patient of mine at the end of his life, who mentored me from '73 all the way up to now. So I've been blessed to be around some of what you would call the top dogs out there, you know, pushing forward. He mentioned Dr. Francis Cress-Welsing when I met him. Dr. Francis Cress-Welsing is the one who beat my butt in several mental health sessions, and I was able to open up my clinic in 1992. You know, so she was on my advisory board to continue to counsel me throughout the process. Actually, when the aneurysm took place, just a little caveat story, when the aneurysm took place, I was at the hospital the next morning. I got there, and a few other doctors, Dr. Joawa Hunter, Januar Moja, you know, several people that was there. What's the sister that's running the program now for her? No, sister who's running the program for Dr. Welsing now. Sabrina. I was going to say B. Brennan. Yeah, Sabrina was there. A bunch of people were there. So as I walked in, I saw Doc, you know, in her bed, tubes and stuff everywhere. And of course, y'all know she had that big crown on her head, that gray crown. Okay, she had that big crown on her head. And as I walked through, I saw all this light coming from her. You know, I'm like, whoa, mama. You know, I'm like, woo. So I just walked over and I kissed her and, you know, thanked her for what it was she did. Then right from there, I jumped on the phone and got in touch with Dr. Jewel Pookam. Y'all know who knows Dr. Jewel Pookam? Raise your hand. Okay, neuroscientists, every neuro, all the big letters and names behind her. Bad sister. So we needed to find out whether or not we could save our sister. That's where we at. So all this hemorrhaging that's going on, it means blood is all up. So when I called Doc, she told me to tell the doctors what to do. So I said, well, you know, I'm not blood family. I said, but we're going to work this out. Y'all know I'm thug. Those who know me know I'm thug. So I grabbed the doctor. And I said, excuse me, sir, my name is Joe Whippersnapper. And my aunt is in there, and I need to know what's going on. Oh, sure, come on over. Takes me over to the screen, pulls up all of her medical work. I got Dr. Pookam. I learned how to use Facebook by that time. I knew how to use it. Had Dr. Pookam on Facebook, listening to everything this dude was saying. After he finished, she said, Kakai, they should be doing so and 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 so. They know how to deal with them hemorrhages, y'all. When that blood get in the brain and all that, they know how. Dr. Pookam told me. I called her sister in Chicago who was on the way here, Lauren, and told Lauren what Doc said. Trying to get them together on the phone so Lauren could tell the doctors what to do. It never happened, as y'all know. Doc died the next day. Lauren got there and Doc died, you know, the next day. But we were clear that there's something can be done with hemorrhaging. Imhotep and all the other brothers back in the day, you know, could deal with brain surgery and all these kinds of things back in Kemetic days. You know, this stuff is real simple for us, but they do not want us to know how to heal stuff. Right? This is a major issue. So, adscollective.org, banner.com, communaleffectherbals.com. When you talk about health and talk about healing, okay? So, let's talk about struggle. Let's talk about sovereignty, you know, and all of those things. First of all, I want to thank you, Sam, for the presentation that you gave. When we talk about nationalism and Pan-Africanism, all of these things, it was absolutely on point. I want to thank you for that, because one of the things that's missing, as he talked about, is this gap, you know, between us and people that have to learn and understand what this movement is all about. People are very, very confused about struggle, about revolution, about Pan-Africanism, about nationalism. I heard the questions that was asked about Pan-Africanism, about nationalism. As Sam stated, it's all the same. It's all the same. What do you mean, Dr. Patterson? One God, one aim, one destiny. So when I'm aiming, I might have a 45, he might have a shotgun. He know how to shoot the shotgun. I know how to shoot a 45. So he gonna make me learn how to shoot the shotgun? You see, but this is the issue when you talk about organizations. He mentioned land, Republic of New Africa. I'm a citizen of the Republic of New Africa. Everybody knows the story, as we talk about Dr. Makuda Shakur when they had the meeting at Aretha Franklin's father's church, New Bethel Church, and the police raided and shot it up. When Makuda Shakur was 16, 17 years old. He threw his body over top of Herman Ferguson, who was leading the development of the provisional government at that time. 17 years old. That's the work that he was doing then. I was down here in D.C. running around the street robbing people at age 7. What you laughing at? You know, but that struggle for me too. So when we talk about revolution. So when you talk about land, the provisional government wanted to have land. He talked about plebiscite. You got to have these plebiscites. People got to come together and get an opportunity to vote on stuff. Things have to be presented to our community. So we had built a provisional government so that we could have a plebiscite. You know, let's organize black people. Let's let folk know that we 5% of the people here, we can get 5% of the country. Give us 5 states. Give us the Cotton Belt, where y'all whipped us and raped us and made us build this country. Give us those 5 states right there. People's like, huh? Y'all want 5 states? Well, y'all really asking? Yeah, we asking for it. We bad like that. You know, and this is what we talk about when we talk about the importance, as he stated, of standing up for black people and being accountable. He called off a bunch of names of people. You know, we got Boukman down in Haiti. Tucson come after that. You know, we got Kwame Nkrumah, Osage folk. The last one was, what's my brother? Gaddafi, who wanted to pull together the African continent around that gold and all that. What they do? They did him in. You know, anybody who wanted to do that, 98% of the African continent is controlled by white folks, by white governments. It's puppet governments, you know, over there in Africa. We come along at a time when SWAPO and MPLA and Samora Machel and you know, all of these people were over there in Africa fighting. You had the women on the front line with their babies tied to their back, rumbling, you know, over there in Africa. Well, we got young people now at age 13 running around shooting each other. The youngest Panther was 16 years old. The youngest Black Panther, 16 years old, Bobby Hutton. They gunned him down, you know, in Cali. You know what I'm saying? 16 years old. So that's what we were doing back then. So all the young people from age 16 to 27 was involved in movement stuff. The oldest Panther was 30. They called him an old head. Wasn't no elders, because he ain't make it that far yet, but he was an old head if he was 30 years old. So what are the young people doing now? How did that take place? How did that separation, you know, take place? How did that seed, you know, get dug up and just thrown away? The seed is gone. So all these young people are not getting the seeds planted in them that will allow them to understand what their role is. As he stated, people don't even understand what it is that we're supposed to be doing. He said it out of his mouth. Don't even understand what we're supposed to be doing. Very, very simple and basic. Everything that was going on when I went to the Great March with Martin Luther King, same stuff going on today. If somebody can tell me something's different, we got a couple of Black Bama millionaires. I'm gonna say that again. We got a couple of Black Bama millionaires. That's why I call them a Bama. Yeah. We need them to do something. I've been saying this for many, many years. Take a baseball team. Take a Washington, D.C. basketball team. We got 10, 15 millionaires on the team. All we need is 5 of them Negroes, 5 of them brothers, to give up $1 million apiece. Every year, I guarantee y'all straighten Southeast out.
Is that right?
That's right. We're straightening it out. But they ain't going to do that. Because if you do it, they're going to kill them. They're going to lose their contracts. They're going to be called them Kaepernicks. Are y'all ready to do that? Y'all ready to give up what it is that y'all got and what you holding on for the liberation of Black people? That's what he's talking about right here when we talk about sovereignty. You got to know what sovereignty means. Sovereignty means we want our own. And we're not going to interfere. Hear what I'm saying? We're not going to interfere in anybody else's stuff. And we don't want nobody to interfere in our stuff. This is why things all messed up, as we know. over the decades, China, Europe, India, all of these other countries have been just digging deeper and deeper into Africa. The disconnect here, we go back to 1972, and a brother by the name of Owusu Sadoki started African Liberation Day. This is how the Malcolm X drummers got started too. We started drumming that Friday. We drummed all night Friday, all day, all night Saturday, all day and all night Sunday. After the program was over, we left Monday morning. That was the origin of the Malcolm X drummers. It wasn't Malcolm X drummers and dancers. We ain't no dancers. They were just straight drummers. But the significant thing about African Liberation Day when we talk about sovereignty is that Owusu Sadoki understood what Sam is talking about when he's presenting here today. He said, we have to come together as Black people, no matter where we are, whether we're in Southeast, over on 37th Place, up in Simple City, over in Langston Terrace, Vietnam. We got names for all these communities. I grew up in all of those communities, and I love them all. No matter where we are, we have to come together and protect ourselves. That's sovereignty. Owusu Sadoki was able to, at that point, Sam, get all of the different organizations that were organizing on the African continent, all the different organizations that were organizing on the South American continent, revolutionary organizations. We're talking Black and brown people. What are you talking about solidarity here? So if you're talking about sovereignty, you have to have somebody who's going to support that sovereignty. So not only do we need Black country to support Black, we need the brown country to. This is how it was done. This is the solidarity that's needed to build this sovereignty that we're talking about. Dr. Mutulu Shakur, I met in 1972, and he was about 19, 20. We're about a year and a half apart, almost 2 years apart. And I went to Gary, Indiana on a mission to deal with presenting a position paper to the Black Caucus. And he had the Black Caucus up on the screen in terms of what their role has been in the development and underdevelopment of Africa. So again, I thank him for that point. Because just because they Black, don't mean nothing. That's why we went to Gary, Indiana in 72, because they were putting together what they called the Black Assembly. And out of that came the Black Caucus, Leroy Jones, the Panthers, everybody was up there. All the Black politicians, all the congressmen, all the senators. The junk was packed with thousands of people. We roll up there as a mob, about 5 of us in our progressive revolutionary cadre. We was all 19, 20 years old, rolling up there. I get to the thing, we passing out our leaflet against police brutality, against methadone, using that to get people off drugs, because we know that people get addicted to methadone, against rehabilitation. We need re-education in our community. And I know rehab. How you going to rehab something that ain't never been broke down? You know what I'm saying? Because we ain't. They just destroyed us. So it's about us being re-educated in that process. So that's the paper that we were presenting up there. I hear somebody in the conference room hollering and screaming at these Negroes that are there, saying that y'all are sellouts. I said, I like this. me see who this dude is. So we roll on down, and who's up on the stage? Commandeered and took the conference over. Mutulu Shakur. He had about 8 dudes around him, dashikis, ready to beat something up if it came up there, And I said, I got to talk to this dude right here. So he come down off the stage, and I was able to squeeze in, to the piece, a Courier piece, but I was able to squeeze in. We called out the ADS Collective. He's another one of the founding members of the ADS Collective, that brother right there, brother Bob Okoye. We went to his class the other day, and everybody got some healing oils, the whole thing. All of the people at the ADS Collective, we linked up into his classes and stuff. He does wonderful, wonderful stuff as it relates to healing. That's liberation medicine that brother is dealing with back there. So, so I meet Mutulu, and we decided we're going to put together an organization called BAD, Sovereignty, building around the country and around the world an anti-drug movement, which is in existence today with the ADS Collective and the acupuncture detox process that's all over the world on every continent. all over the world. We have acupuncture detox specialists in about 5 or 6 different states. We're in Belize. I have one student in Ghana. We got a student that travels from here to Hawaii, Okoye. You know, so we're in Hawaii too. You know, but wherever we are, that's what we represent. So Mutulu and I, along with Ron Clark, developed an organization called BAD, Blacks Against Drugs. That organization included Brother Salahuddin, who was in Pittsburgh, another program in Detroit, Philadelphia, but they were all Black-inspired, Black-conscious treatment programs, and we put them together. I got a treatment 30 days later, because I said, I ain't gonna let nobody stick no needles in me. Y'all know I'm an acupuncturist. But I said, ain't nobody gonna stick no needles in me. We went to get to New Orleans to have that meeting for BAD. I had the flu. I wanted to go out. I was a little boy from Southeast Washington, ain't left the city in my life. I want to go somewhere. They say Bill Street, Bourbon Street. You know, I want to get some beads thrown at me and all that stuff they supposed to do in New Orleans. I ain't getting none of that, but anyway. So I let them treat me. I had sniffles, fever, aches, pains, snot, boogers everywhere. You understand? I mean, terrible. I fell asleep, woke up 40 minutes later, Sam, I ain't had no symptoms, no sniffling, no coughing, no mucus. I'm like, what's going on? Man, you had something in them needles, which of course has been asked of me throughout the years. So that was my first experience, you know, with that acupuncture. What did Mutulu Shakur do? In 1970, his children were in an automobile accident. And a sister by the name of Nuri Kochiyama, who was a Japanese revolutionary, very, very close friend to Malcolm X. They were like this, you know. Got Mutulu and took him to Chinatown. He smelled matzo. He smelled matzo, Okoye. He smelled matzo, Taz. My students know what matzo smell like. It smell like weed. But he smelled, yeah, what's that? Like he wanted to hit now. So what's that? He said, that's matzo. He said, will that work with my children who were in an automobile accident that were paralyzed? I said, yeah. Long story short, it did. Healed the children. Mutulu in 1970 said, look, this acupuncture thing out here in China, they used it, Mao Zedong, young revolutionary, used it to get all of the drugs out of China. They were engulfed with opium. So Mao Zedong put together the Barefoot Doctors team, and they went all through the hood, the rural community over there. They went all through the hood doing free acupuncture and herbs and stuff all over the place. So Mutulu said, hey, this methadone is killing people. That got people on, those who don't know about methadone, it came from Adolf Hitler, Dolafine. Eli Lilly bought the patent back in 1960-something to use it for people who were addicted to damn dope. So why are you gonna get somebody dope to get them off of dope? You know, it don't make no sense, but that is how they operate here, because it's all about control. Y'all already know that. The only reason why they use methadone is to stop people from robbing. So it's gonna stop them from buying, getting money to get dope. Just drug them up. And that's what they did. So we introduced acupuncture, Mutulu, in 1970 up in New York. I went to Lincoln Hospital and they were treating 80 people every 10, 15 minutes, 800 people a day. Now, if you can only envision people in line waiting for Nikes, envision 800 people every day waiting in line to get acupuncture that's on dope. This is how mean. Now, how many people in here have had acupuncture? That don't include ADS. Okay, cool. So y'all know what it can do. You know what it can do in terms of dealing with what? The traumas that the African diaspora has been dealing with when we talk about the need for sovereignty. How are we going to get sovereignty? And we got all these issues that Sam was talking about. Mental health issues. Deep mental health issues. Everybody in this room, and if you tell me you ain't from here. It's impossible for any black person or person of color, black, brown, yellow, impossible for you not to have experienced some form, some level of trauma, whether it's psychological, social, you understand, political, what you done dealt with it, domestic, you know, self-imposed, you see. So why is that? Because our diaspora has lost its sovereignty. Its sovereignty, as he talked about it, includes everything that we need. And he said, we have everything that we need in the African continent. There's no phone or electronic device that can be used anywhere on the world without that little piece of something from what country you come from?
Congo.
Yeah. Yeah. Do y'all understand what that means? Y'all understand how much money I would have in my pocket if we was owning that country? We don't own that country. Else we'd be getting something. South Africa. Oh, whoa, okay, they won. Talking about sovereignty here. Oh, they won. So we got sovereignty with them. So we got diamonds. Hell no. De Beers still got that. We don't own no diamonds. Oh, the gold. Oh, no, they still. Winnie Mandela was the Jason Scranson, not my man. I love my man. But Winnie was a soldier. Winnie was a soldier. The movement was going on while he was locked up. Nana Shashebe, who got exiled out of South Africa, her and her husband. They ancestors now. So we had an opportunity to work with them. We had an opportunity to hear from them. Because if they went back to South Africa, they were going to kill them on sight. So these became our best friends that we worked with here. Nana Shashebe and her husband, Baba Shashebe, he just passed not too long ago. So they brought that concept right into our community. They worked at the independent black schools, Ujamaa and Roots and all of these other places. And they brought that sovereignty concept, to us in that process. Dr. Shakur, when he put that process together up at Lincoln Hospital, and we're treating 800 people a day, it got interrupted because of the Assata Shakur and Brinks trial. Everybody's familiar with that? Who's not familiar with it? Oh, you're not familiar. You're not familiar. Okay. The Assata Shakur was in a shootout on the New Jersey Turnpike with the New Jersey police. In the car was Zayd Malik Shakur, Assata Shakur, and another brother, Sundiata Akole, who just got out. He's 80-something years old. He's been in jail since 1968, 69. But the oldest living political prisoner in the world, hear what I said, the oldest living political prisoner in the world just got out, Ruchell McGee. Ruchell McGee. Ruchell McGee goes all the way back to Jonathan Jackson, who they murdered in jail because they thought he had a gun in his bush. That's scary. But that's how they do us, in this process. Nonetheless, Mutulu Shakur decided to build nationhood that we needed to address the health issues. That was his role. So he said, we're going to put together barefoot doctors. So when we opened up that clinic up there in the Bronx, it was important to spread that. The Brinks and the Assata Shakur trial took place. Mutulu went underground. I was doing a little bit of something myself. We all came back up because I'm one of the unindicted co-conspirators in that trial. It's important for everybody to get this book. This book just came out. It's right here. It's right here in the store. It's called An American Family, The Shakurs, The Nation They Built. The Shakurs. So where did that come from? There's a brother by the name of Saladin Shakur, Abdul Shakur, who was a very, very close friend with Malcolm X. His son, Zayd Malik Shakur, who was murdered on the turnpike with Assata Shakur. His other son, Lumumba Shakur, who was assassinated in New Orleans by the feds. When you look at the video, Dope is Deaf, type it in your phone. Dope is Deaf. I'm going to give you a minute because I want you to add that. Dope is Deaf by Vice, V-I-C-E. Write it down, put it in your phone. You got to watch it. Dope is Deaf is a documentary that chronicles what I'm talking about, how the acupuncture got started. But it also shows how the Panthers in New York were dealing with the dope dealers. There's a scene where Lumumba Shakur has a pound of heroin, and he takes it and bashes it in the gut. This is the gentleman that was murdered, that was assassinated, because the Panthers were fearless. We didn't go out looking for dope dealers, but if they came in our neighborhood, we had to deal with it. You got to say, bro, you can't come in here with that. And if you don't go, we're going to deal with it. Same thing the dope busters did over in Paradise Manor with the Nation of Islam when they cleared all the crack out of there. Right. Brother pulled a shotgun on the Nation. They took the shotgun from him and cocked it and shot it. It was empty. It was going to kill that boy right there. So it wasn't no joke. So now you got Trayvon Martin talking about bringing the National Guard in to D.C. No, bring the nation back. Bring the Panthers back. You know, all of you young brothers in here, all you men in here, you know, again, in terms of building sovereignty, independence, we got to start with the individual. So Mutulu Shakur spreaded that concept of acupuncture around the country. In every city now, here in DC, they came to me in the early, mid-90s, Doc, we want you to run this acupuncture program down at DC courts. Of course, they weren't going to let me do what I wanted to do, so I didn't do it. We continue to have our own programs and open up our own clinics. But now you have acupuncture detox at the Veterans Administration. The veterans are getting it. They call it battleground acupuncture. Black folk during slavery have been raped, brutalized. Black men were raped. Y'all understand what I'm saying? Black men who had never experienced being raped were raped. That wasn't a part of our culture. But they raped us. Another video, Goodbye, Uncle Tom. Goodbye, Uncle Tom. Some French people made it, but you know, a couple of things in there y'all need to see, because you've never seen a movie with black people running around for an hour and a half, butterball naked, booties and Johnsons and titties and stuff all over the place. Little 13-year-old girl being rubbed down by a big fat cracker. You got to see this movie. It's 3 white men dive into a pile of black women on the slave ship and start raping them in front of all the men who are locked down with chains and the babies. People tell me, I can't watch it, Kakai. I said, you better turn that goddamn thing back on. Mama, our people had to suffer and deal with that. I got people calling me talking about, I couldn't watch it. I couldn't watch that white man rape that. I understand. But in order for us to be able to address the issues that we're dealing with, we got to see it. We got to analyze it. We got to look at it. And if we don't, what does that say about us? So when we talk about sovereignty and building, that concept of acupuncture detox is in South America. It's in Australia. It's in Europe. It's in Hawaii. It's on every continent. We have thousands and thousands of acupuncture detox specialists who are curing people. We have trauma, which is where I was going. That trauma from the rapes, that trauma from the 200, 300, 400, 500 years of slavery, that trauma that still exists today. Unemployment, 35%. Nothing has changed. Don't y'all believe that when the news says 13%. That's the whole damn country. That ain't got nothing to do with us. We've been at 37% ever since slavery. It ain't never changed. When slavery was over, less than 1% of us could read or write. Claude Anderson teaches that. After slavery, we own less than 1-2% of the wealth. Claude Anderson teaches us that. So what makes us think that we've gotten somewhere in terms of illiteracy, in terms of black people reading and writing? So the young dudes that's in the street that I talk to, that are running around shooting and killing people, y'all need to get with it. That are running around the street killing and shooting people, they can't read or write. They don't understand and comprehend words when I'm talking to them, trying to explain stuff to them. This is how bad it is. This is the great job that the white folk have done, that you all need to understand. That what we're going up against is exactly what they created. And if you're not looking at it like that, you think you're just going around doing social activities, you're just going around trying to help some black people, you're just going around, trying to be involved in some kind of organization that he's saying that people should be. You better have some principle with that. You better have some principle with that. Know what you're getting into. Know what you're getting into. Know that you're getting into a fight. Know that you're getting into a war. Know that we have an enemy that we're fighting on a daily basis. And that enemy has global effects. That enemy's job is to not allow sovereignty. The individual, your family, your community, your nation, your race, then we're going on to the human diaspora. But in that order. So if we talk about sovereignty, you got to start with you first.
Yes, sir. Before we let Baba go, let's give him a hand. Let's give him a hand. we're gonna field questions. I just want to say thank you for that presentation. You know, when we reasoned about it on the phone briefly, I had no doubts in my mind, but you know, you definitely took it home, kept mentioning sovereignty. Before we bring Mama Sheila up, I do want to open the floor for questions. Questions or comments for our Baba here. Okay, my man.
Peace, Baba.
Peace.
I gotta tell you too. I hit up Dude because I seen you at the memorial. So I hit up Dude, seeing if we could connect.
Which memorial?
The one that you spoke at. The
What,
memorial.
Matulu?
The one that Black Power ended up. They ended up Black Power Media. I've been watching. I've been practicing the fast and everything. So that's what I was. But my question, as I've been training this month and attempting to kind of synchronize where I've been coming at spiritually in terms of my academics, which previously was like musical theater, dance, thing like that, I'm realizing that a lot of this is becoming like a martial art for me. A lot of what I previously was like. So could you speak, I guess, to the other aspects of traditional healing in their relationship, you know, whether it's, you know, teas, herbalism, health, you know, in their relationship to, I guess, the movement, or where you feel like your current place with the movement.
Gotcha. I just got finished talking about that. Y'all heard me talk about acupuncture. Y'all heard me talk about the importance of developing that and pushing that. When we talk about the issues of Black people and addressing the issues, whether it's racism, whether it's the economic issues, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's employment, whether it's housing, you know, whether it's high blood pressure, diabetes, we're #1 in the country here. Black folk, #1 in the country here with high blood pressure, diabetes, asthma, HIV, and AIDS. #1 right here in Washington, D.C. So to address and to talk about what he's talking about, it's important for us to have what we call a holistic approach. A holistic approach that's spelled with a W. That's spelled with a W. W-H-O-L-E. Meaning what? The whole thing. Well, what's missing when people talk about the holistic approach? Normally they say body, mind, spirit. They got it all twisted. In African culture, what's first? Spirit. Absolutely. So we have to address the spirit when we talk about health first. Then we address the mind. Then we address the body, which is the easiest thing, right, Poirier? That is, we got something for that. But the struggle is with the spiritual issues and the mental issues. What do you mean spiritual issues? Catholic, Baptist? No. We know what we're talking about. We talk about your spirit, you know, your traumatized stuff that you went through. Do you pray? Do you meditate? Do you breathe? How much sleeping you getting? You know, all of these things enhance our what? Spirit. Don't get it twisted. And you can do the my Father, Son, Holy Ghost, throw the blood on. You can do Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, Assalamu Alaikum, you know, whatever. But the issue is about, because I do it all just so that you know. So it's important for us to recognize all that's ours. That's why I do it all. You know, Koye, I'm right with him. We hooga booga. You know, we do a little of this, we do a little of that. Okay, so that's what's important in terms of Black folks. So in health and healing, we have to have a holistic approach. We got to deal with the spiritual issues, sleep, breathing, meditation, trauma resolve. What, Dr. Patterson? Trauma prevention. What? Sleep. That's spirit. Because if you got high blood pressure or diabetes, or you lonely, sad, grieving, and you ain't doing this stuff right there, you're going to stay right there. Y'all with me, yay?
Yeah.
Okay, then we go over to the mind. Okay, what? Now, I'm all anxious, worried, all this and that, and I got high blood pressure. Ain't nothing happening. I'm not going to heal. I got diabetes. I need to be calm. Ain't nothing happening. I got asthma. You know, so my mind has to be calm. We got that going on in the spirit. Prayer, meditate. And take that right down to the mind too. How we gonna have a strong mind? Prayer, meditation, breathing, sleep. But other thing over here with the mind, the other two things that we had to add over there, nutrition. I ain't saying nothing about no food. I said nutrition. That's herbs, minerals, etc., etc., etc. for the mind. Then physical therapy. I didn't say exercise because that's under physical therapy. Qi Kung that my man does in the back. Any kind of physical movement would be therapeutic. So physical therapy, we want to call it, you see, in that process. Then we shoot over to the body. Answering your question, how do we approach it? Any issue we deal with, we got to go spiritual. We got to go mental. Education, we We got to deal with the spiritual component. Then we get over into the body, which is the easiest part. So if a person's dealing with their spirituality, they're getting information and education and reading about Dr. Sabi and, you know, reading and listening to Dr. Kai's videos on YouTube or whatever, however they're going to get the information to get the body right. What do you mean, Dr. Patterson, eating right? Oh, how do we do that? Sleep, prayer, God damn it, go all the way over there too? Yeah. In order to have a strong body, you got to sleep. You got to pray. You got to meditate. You got to be in the breathing. You got to make sure your body is not trembling and nervous all the time because you're still dealing with the trauma and the stress that you ain't resolved yet as a black person in this country. Some of us got more than others. Y'all with me so far? And then we got to do trauma resolve so our body does not get all jammed up again. So how do we do that? Meditation. Come on, y'all. It's the whole holistic process. Now, the last thing, which we all be missing, which I teach all of my mentees and all of my students, you cannot be holistic if you're not doing what Sam's doing. What you talking about in the community? Coming out like me and Sheila. Coming out into the community to teach people. You ain't holistic if you ain't doing that. Don't say you are, because you ain't got the whole thing going. He said sovereignty. How you gonna leave your community out? Oh, I'm gonna become a vegan. Oh, I'm gonna go to Okoye's class and get Qigong, but I ain't gonna share it with my community. Oh, I'm gonna go to United Negro Improvement Association's movement, one God, one aim, one destiny. And I'm not gonna share it with my community. What y'all doing with that part? What y'all doing with the community part? You holistic. You here for the mind part. You getting this information. We got a little spiritual vibe going on in here. We got the good food over there. But what are you doing in terms of going out into your community and doing something deliberate? He just got finished talking about some, sovereignty. What are you doing individually to raise this issue of revolution? So that's the last thing right there in that holistic process, community environment. We do herb walks because we want people in the community to know that there's healing herbs all up and down Georgia Avenue. All kinds of herbs. All kinds, red clover, senna, lamb's quarter, burdock root, dandelion root, yellow dock root. All that's all around us. Because we done herb walks all up and down Georgia Avenue, all up and down 9th Street, me, Dr. You, Dr. Douglas, all us for years. And you go on and you buying the herbs, and you get, again, spirit, mind, body. Now we got community. Sankofa represents that. Kwame represents that. Community. So if you're not doing anything in your community, you heard it from me. I ain't scared of it. You ain't holistic. So you got to do something back in the community. That answer your question?
Absolutely.
We're going to bring sovereignty if we do that for sure, huh? My man. How old are you?
23.
Okay, cool in the game. Y'all make sure y'all talk to that young. We love all
Sign
of
a
y'all.
sign-in sheet.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Are we good?
Yeah,
Last question. I want
okay.
I want to hear.
up over there at the VA hospital,
Yeah.
they have a substance abuse and,
Yes.
and rehabilitation program,
They
right?
do.
And I go over there, right? But I might have been in the program once over there, but I've been in some other programs there. And when one of our ancestors passed on, the great Dr. Ron Clark, I would, if you could speak on him briefly, you know, I heard you call a lot of other like traditional African names.
Mhm.
I don't know those people.
Yeah.
Then I may know their name.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that
Yeah.
opportunity.
So I was sharing that.
Right.
I was sharing that with the clinic
Yeah.
up there at the VA because the majority of the people work up there don't never even heard of Dr.
Of course.
Ron Clark. They didn't
No.
know about Dr.
No.
Ron Clark.
Ron Clark was, I met in 1970, you know, and I walked into this building and they were doing acupuncture. This is before I meet him too, before. And this is Ron Clark because Ron Clark was working with the Black Panther Party here in Washington, D.C., and we all were working with the Panthers and we became Panther Cubs and all that kind of stuff. And he introduced acupuncture at that point in 1970. It's 2 years before I met Dr. Shakur. This is who he's talking about, Ron Clark. Ron Clark, African name Adisa Ajamu, founded this organization, RAP Incorporated, Regional Addiction Prevention, for the purposes of housing Black and brown men and women who were addicted to substances. The house ran like the African village. When you came in, everybody was brothers and sisters and mamas and papas. We had a rule: no physical violence or threat of physical violence. If you threaten somebody, we kick you out the program. That program had a 3-day vegan diet. There's no program in the country that had a vegan diet because the drug addicts went crazy. We had a no smoking program. Can you believe that? They went crazy. It was jumping out windows trying to go get cigarettes. You know, but these are the kinds of progressive things that Ron Clark was doing because of his relationship with progressive organizations like the Black Panther Party, you know, and other, you know, progressive revolutionary organizations. Ron Clark passed a few years ago. The organization RAP is still operating, but it does not operate as an African village anymore. So everybody, when they graduated from the program after being in there 6 months to a year, they got an African name. Can you imagine Pookie going home with Kwame? You know, Shaniqua going home with Asata. You know what I'm saying? So this was the great things that we were doing at RAP Incorporated for people who came in, who were school dropouts, who knew nothing about who they were, knew nothing about their culture. Black or brown people knew nothing about their culture. So what we did there was we infused that. And that's the difference between us and a lot of other drug treatment programs. I'm gonna wrap it up right here. That's the difference between us and other drug treatment programs. Other drug treatment programs will use this methadone and get people addicted to that. Other drug treatment programs will counsel people and talk to them about their hurts, about their pains, about their traumas, but they will not tell them what I'm telling y'all. They will not tell them that the white man put the drugs in the community. They will not tell them about the economics and the politics around drugs and where how Adolf Hitler brought methadone over here, you know, and how when we talk about fentanyl, 20,000 ODs a year normally through these years, through these decades. Last year, I'm saying through the whole country, 20,000. If that means, maybe 10.
The number one cause of death from 18 years to 50 years old is the number one cause of death.
What? Fentanyl. Now, so it took that leadership position in the drug world. But this is the kicker. 10, 20,000 every year. Last year, over 100 and something thousand just from fentanyl. So they've gone past that number. We're going to get that this year. You know, I have relatives who OD'd on drugs, and we've had to go to them. So it doesn't matter. Y'all know folk, you know, who messing with drugs, who've gone through, you know, drug situations, you know. But that's the condition that we're dealing with now. The black community is a liquor store in every corner in our community. Ain't nothing changed, you know, since that happened. You know, so the same thing that Martin Luther King marched for back in the day, same thing is going on right now. Same thing that Marcus Garvey stood for, Malcolm X stood for, same things we standing for today. So Dr. Matul Shakur stated very clearly, it's important for all of us to take the mantle. It's important for all of us, you know, to, as my brother stated, get involved in some kind of a principled movement. And one of the things that the movements have to have is a tool that allows them to address, analyze, and deal with criticism, because that's a major, major problem in our organizations, being able to address some of the issues and concerns that come up as we're working together. Within our organization banner, within the ADS collective, we have criticism, self-criticism sessions every week so that we can address our issues, so we can continue to build on principle, not on ego, personality, this or that, but based on principles. You know, the New African Creed, the 10-point program and platform, the 42 principles of Maya. We can go on and on and on and on. Okay? So thank you all so much. Thank you, Sam.
All right, family. We got Mama Sheila Brown coming up. Let's give her a hand, y'all. Let's give her a hand. Amy Jocks Garvey Scholar.
All right.
Thank you, family. Is it okay if I do this without the mic? Can y'all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Is that okay, Bob? Okay. Mic's free, yeah. Peace and blessings, family. It's such an honor to be here. I'm so humbled to be in the presence of the Most High's beautiful people, African people, the descendants of the strong ones,
That's right.
the Melanite people, and home in many ways. And I won't go into all that because I know that we have a little bit of time to share a lot of very important information. So I brought my ancestors with me up here because they always bring me a little bit of comfort.
Yes.
And I always want to humble myself and decrease my ego because the ego will interfere with the message that I want to deliver to you all today, which is, how many of y'all like stories?
Love 'em.
Okay. So I have a lot of facts floating around in my head all the time, powerful facts, facts that will just blow you away. But most people enjoy when there is a story because it's African people. We like to hear the why. We like to hear the how, the when, the where, and the what, right? And because I was blessed and privileged to come from a powerful line of women who were griot and who were medicine women, I incorporate storytelling in very powerful messages. And so what I want to talk with you today about is a very primal story of sovereignty, a very DNA story, a story that belongs to all of us. And this is the perfect day to do it because this day, 136 years ago, this primal story of creation, of revolution, of global Pan-Africanism as we now know it today, of self-determination, this auspicious day is the perfect day because this is the day that a beautiful African woman who was living in St. Anne's Bay, Jamaica, pushed out of her womb the answer to a problem. On this day, 136 years ago, not too long ago, so just a drop in a box, a woman pushed the answer to a prayer out of her womb. As her husband stood by, not too far away, listening for the sound of what he knew would be a young man who would be a powerful leader, listening in his library, apart, but not too far apart, a man was born by the name of the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey.
Yeah.
On this day, something real powerful was happening. Now, this is a more powerful story than the revelation that I'm about to share with you. Because I want to take you back through your divine imagination, if you will, about 200 to 250 years prior, when an African man, a powerful, hurt African man, traversed against his will on the transatlantic slave trade. As he sat on this ship, not knowing where to go, anger filled his heart and soul, and something so primal in him, something so powerful in him, vowed to get revenge on his oppressive enemies. Something that was so strong that allowed him to survive the transatlantic slave trade. And as he gazed into the eyes of the woman that should have been his wife, they communicated without words and agreed to never, ever, ever let water, land, or oppression in any form, whether it was language or weapon, get in between their sacred right to perform the ancient African manifesto of manifesting your own destiny. And so they saw something horrific on that ship, and they survived it. because they wanted this testimony to be shared with you today about the importance of something so simple: African love, Black love, spiritual love between a man and a woman, and the desire, the innate birthright to reproduce one's DNA, to reproduce one's spiritual, intellectual, mental, and cultural selves without interference, in divine sovereignty as the children of the Most High. And somehow between generations, that unspoken covenant between man and woman, African man, survived throughout the ages, reproducing itself periodically over and over and over again, sometimes coming in the form of a Coretta and a Martin Luther King, sometimes in the form of a Betty Shabazz and a Malcolm X, or Elijah Muhammad and his wife, whose name escapes me, I believe it's Clara Muhammad, or sometimes through a Nat Turner and his beloved wife, or sometimes through all of the manifestations. But I want to share with you about the story of the one couple who you probably know in some level, but I want to shed some insights about how this powerful commitment between indigenous African manhood and indigenous African womanhood could be responsible for this space that we're in right now, something so primal and so powerful and so revolutionary, yet so simple. It always comes in twos, masculine and feminine, not always at the same time, but always together. So when the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey was born to this divine feminine woman by the name of Sarah Jane Richards, and a very powerful but very disturbed, angry African man by the name of Marcus Garvey, the two of them formed something so primal, revolutionary, and important that only after trial and trial and trial, after 11 attempts, after 9 deaths, did they finally get the right formula. And his name was Marcus Mosiah Garvey. But that's not where the answer stopped. That was a part of the answer to a very important question. It took another 100 months when the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey was just about 8 years old, when he was still trying to balance and understand his environment, understand and process what appeared to be this racial injustice, what appeared to be his destiny manifest, his sheer will to overcome, to be the smartest, the strongest, and the best. He was just 8 years old when the other half of the solution was being born. And there was a man, a powerful king, by the name of George Samuel Jock on the other side of Jamaica, who was watching as his wife, Charlotte Brown, pushed out a star by the name of Amy Euphemia Jakes Garvey. Well, she wasn't Garvey at that time, but she was, right? And so what those two primal African people who survived that transatlantic slave trade, who communicated their commitment to one another, that no matter what tried to come between them, they will continue to reproduce the DNA, the revolutionary love between man and woman, between African feminine and African masculine, that would come together somehow in Harlem, New York in 1917. Not even on the same trip, but both in 1917. You see how this powerful story story is starting to come across. Now, what the divine, the Most High, always knew is that there needed to be a solution to a very big problematic issue of oppression of a people. And the answer to that had to come with the ability to attract and grow and manage resources, financial resources. So he would put this in the man. He would also give that man the gift of oratory, the gift of speech and power and influence. And he would also give that man the ability to have a kind of self-determined confidence. But it would also be coupled with the fact that he was raised by a man who didn't trust anybody. While he was struggling to balance the love of his mother, Sarah Richards Garvey, who was a brilliant woman who owned property with her brother, who grew crops, and who made sure that her beloved baby boy, her Marcus Mosiah Garvey, because she knew from the moment she felt him kicking in the womb that he was going to be a powerful leader. And she said, he's got to be like Moses. This is the 11th one, the Moses of the Bible that they were so familiar with, the one who led the people out of bondage, right? She said, it's going to be like Moses. And the dad said, he's going to be a leader for sure. Look at when he was born on the ascension of the Leo season, right? And so they had an issue because he wanted the boy to be named after him. But she wanted the boy to be named after who he was, the Moses of his people. So they came to a compromise. Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Okay? Now, on the other hand, Mr. George Samuel Jacques, who spoke Spanish and English, who had already traveled the world, who had determined that even though this cute little baby girl was so feminine and sweet, that he was going to teach her everything he would have taught a boy. By the age of 7, Miss Amy Euphemia Jakes was responsible for reading the newspapers and articulating to her dad everything that newspaper said. And not just what it said, but what it meant. See, she had to have, by the age of 7, this global perspective. He also taught his daughter how to shoot. Why did he do that? Well, all of these things he taught his daughter, how to hold her own among a group of men, how to protect herself. He also wanted her to be a nurse. But the opportunity came for her to go and work at a law firm. She was a highly educated woman, which was quite unusual for the women of that period in that region. She had the equivalent of a high school education, which was very uncommon. She had what was considered a Victorian education. She had an accent, but she spoke more like a Victorian Caribbean woman, right? And so her mother, Miss Charlotte, was a very feminine woman. She's very concerned about etiquette. You will learn the piano. You will be highly educated. You will cross your legs. You will know how to conduct yourself like a lady. But the opportunity presented itself for Amy Euphemia Jakes Garvey, this highly educated girl in another part of Jamaica, to go and work at a law firm. Why a law firm? Well, guess what her dad said? Not today, Satan. My beautiful daughter will never work around a bunch of raunchy, cursing men. Well, the ancestors had another plan. Because Mr. George Samuel Jacques was a powerful man who would overcome his daughter's ambitions. And so the ancestors took him out of the picture. And he passed away. And the law firm again approached Mother Amy, and the mother, the more gentler aspect, and Amy Euphemia Jakes stepped into the shoes of her father and said, I will be going to work in this law firm. And she went and worked in the law firm. So here you have a woman who is trained in the law. She mastered the materials and the scholarship of the law firm. She could do every aspect of that law firm's business. She knew how to process her father's estate. She knew how to handle all aspects of the legal issues. She mastered the legal secretary work that was provided to her. And then she decided after 3 years or 4 years of working in that firm that she was ready to move on. Jamaica had she had outreached the potential that was in Jamaica, and she had set her eyes on the United States. And at the same time, in March of 1917, the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey had somehow reached the same conclusion, that he needed to get out of Jamaica and expand his search to the United States, particularly coming to meet a man by the name of Booker T. Washington, who had the Tuskegee Industrial School, right? And so Marcus Messiah Garvey read this book called Up from Slavery, and it changed his life. And he had to go meet this man who was taking the formerly enslaved and turning them into men. And he wanted to bring that to Jamaica. And Booker T. Washington invited him to the United States. But the Booker T. Washington didn't get to meet him because he passed away right before they were supposed to meet. But the story still unfolds because the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey, 136 years ago to this day, that was born in Jamaica, arrives in the United States in March of 1917. And from the moment he stepped foot in Harlem, New York, the world has never been the same. Had he not been here, you might not be here. Had he not been here, Sankofa Books, All Eyes on Egypt, Dr. Malachi York, Malcolm X, Elijah Muhammad, and so many others might not have been here. So this is an ancestral story, a primal story of love and the unification of Black woman and Black man. Going somewhere with this. It's a simple formula, sovereignty. One Black man and one Black woman coming together to solve a world global problem through love, the balance. So while you have the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey with the ability endowed upon him by the ancestors to attract resources, to transform the mindset of a people, to navigate the snakes operating around him, and to organize the masses. But they also bring with him a woman who would be in a position to help a man who would be knee-deep in legal issues process the legal world. A woman who had the ability to set up cash controls for a man who was being abused by the snakes around him. Because when you attract the ability to gain resources like millions of dollars at a time, and you don't have the skill set around you to help manage that, you better have another half who can come in and do what you can't do for yourself. And that is where Amy Euphemia Jakes Garvey comes in. Mother Amy Euphemia Jakes Garvey, to tell her story is to tell his story. They became so close. They shared the same passion for freedom and revolution that when she spoke, it was like finishing his sentence. She was quite honestly the only person who could articulate and archive the orator's words. In fact, that's one of the gifts of her womb to you. That story that you hear all the time about how the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey asked the questions, where is the Black man's powerful men of world leadership? Where is his government? He didn't write that. He shared that with his love, with his wife, and she shared it with you. It's the diary of her life. You call it Garvey and Garveyism. This is the writings, the intellectual prowess of a woman from the 1920s, a woman born in 1895. But she was so smart, she realized that if y'all realized that it was her, despite the fact that her name is here, you wouldn't read it. So she doesn't even introduce herself until page 33. After she has pulled you in, where you think you're reading John Henrik Clark, perhaps even the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey himself, perhaps even Tony Martin. But you are reading the history of a people, and it's from the voice and mind of a woman. Her name is Amy Euphemia Jakes Garvey, and everything good, just about that you know about the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey, he didn't write it. He told it to her. She heard it from him. She captured his speeches. She wrote down his articles. She edited his words so that you could have it. And we owe her a debt, because this book not only contains the love story of a man and a woman, a primal story that is so ancient and so African, that to not read this and to not analyze it, it is a crime. Pick up the book and read it and analyze it. Because in here, she tells you the names of your enemies. Assistant Attorney District Edwin Kilrow. She gives you articles after articles about the way our people were being treated. This is the diary of a woman, but it is a history of a people, and it is the true work and life and legacy of the answer to a devastating problem of oppression. His name was the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey, and today, on this auspicious day, he was born 136 years ago.
Yay.
Powerful date. You talk about Black August. It began a long, long time ago. There's something synergetic about this particular month. That Nat Turner chose this month by way of the ancestors to draw on the revolution that led to the consciousness of the so-called good white people who said, oh, no. We got to do something about this slavery. Everybody played a role. Some of our most prolific leaders today and in the past were born this month. And if you are not careful and conscious, you will probably miss the fact that to this day, the children who are being born in hospitals are not going to make it out, because our enemies know Black August better than you do.
Wow.
You better be careful about the July and August babies that you are taking into the hospitals. Did you hear about the beheading? July and August is a spiritual, powerful month for the ancestors to incarnate. And your enemies know this. So Black August is about Black love. It is about a commitment between masculine and feminine, woman and man, intellectual equals. Understand that when you hear the voice of the Honorable Amy Euphemia Jakes Garvey, who talks about this important concept, she wrote about it in 1925. Where she was trying to tell you, sisters, about who you are. You are not just a helpmate. You are the important, puzzle piece. You carry with you the DNA of the revolutionaries. They cannot come without your support. They cannot come without your passage. They cannot come, and you are not just a conduit for it. You're not just a conduit for the passing. You are a structure of spiritual and intellectual design to co-create revolutionary freedom. The sovereignty that we so crave is in our mitochondrial DNA. We hold the solution right here, right here. It's as primal to us as fire and water, earth and air. And it cannot exist in a vacuum. It must always exist in divine balance and harmony with the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garveys of the world. And any brother who comes with that power and energy that doesn't balance himself will become a lunatic and ineffective. When we come, we always have an impersonator that usually precedes or coexists with us. I'm talking about the healing women. There is always an impersonator that attaches itself at the same time. It confuses the brothers. But the characteristics of the divine feminine are always going to be the same. They're going to always be the balance and counterpart to his elements. If he is too much fire, she's going to be a lot of water. If he's too much air, she's going to be a lot of earth. The balance will work itself out, and she's yielding, Mother Coretta, right? She has something about her that appears to be dignity to you, quiet to you, but it's just the internal of his external. It's always divine balance. She's the reason why he's not dead. Because if you get the impersonator, she will go and destroy him because of his weaknesses. She will consult with the FBI to destroy him because she's the impersonator. She will conspire against him when her ego is triggered. See, the divine feminine that might come 100 months after he was born, when he's just 8 years old, she might just be getting here. But she comes with a patience. Not because she's frou-frou, not because she's so emphatically in love with him, but because she loves race and country. Yeah. She writes about it. She calls it Women as Leaders. 1925. Queen Mother A.B. Euphemia J. Garvey has a message for you, Queen. The exigencies of this present age require that women take their places beside their men. White women are rallying all their forces and uniting regardless of national boundaries to save their race from destruction and preserve its ideals for posterity. White men have begun to realize that as women are the backbone of the home, so can they, by their economic experience and their aptitude for details, participate effectively in guiding the destiny of nation and race. Yes. No line of endeavor remains closed or long to the modern woman. She agitates for equal opportunity and gets it. She makes good on the job and gains the respect of men who heretofore opposed her. She's not afraid of hard work, and by being independent, she gets more out of the present day husband than her grandmother did in the good old days. The women of the East, both yellow and black, are slowly but surely imitating the women of the Western world. And as white women are bolstering up a decaying white civilization, Even so, women of the darker races are sallying forth to help their men establish a civilization according to their own standards and to strive for world leadership. Women of all climes and races have as great a part to play in the development of their particular group as the men. Now, some readers may not agree with us on this issue, but do they not mold the minds of their children, the future men and women? Even before birth, a woman can so direct her thoughts and conduct as to bring into the world either a genius or an idiot. Imagine the early years of contact between mother and child, when she directs his form of speech and is responsible for his conduct and deportment. Many a man has risen from the depths of poverty and obscurity and made his mark in life due to the counsel and advices of a good mother whose influence guided his footsteps throughout his life. Women, therefore, are extending this holy influence outside of the realm of the home, softening the ills of the world with their gracious and kindly contact. Now, some men may argue that the home will become broken up and women will become coarse and lose their gentle appeal. We do not think so, because everything can be done with moderation. The doll baby kind of woman is a thing of the past. The wide-awake woman is forging ahead, prepared for all emergencies and ready to answer any call, even if it be to face the cannons on the battlefield. New York has a woman Secretary of State. 2 states have women governors. And we would not be surprised if within the next 10 years, a woman graces the White House in Washington, D.C. Women are also filling diplomatic positions. And from time immemorial, women have been used as spies to get information for their countries. Now, white women, they have greater opportunity to display their ability due to the standing of both races and due to the fact that black men are less appreciative of their women than white men. The former were more ready to sing the praises of white women than their own. Yet who is more deserving of admiration than the black woman? She who has endured the rigors of slavery, the deprivations consequent on a pauperized race, and the indignities heaped upon a weak and defenseless people. Yet she suffers all with fortitude and stands ever ready to help in the onward march to freedom and power. Be not discouraged, black women of the world, but push forward regardless of the lack of appreciation shown you. A race must be saved, a country must be redeemed, and unless you strengthen the leadership of vacillating Negro leaders, we will remain marking time until the yellow race gains leadership of the world, and we be forced to subservience under them or extermination. We are tired of hearing Negro men say there's a better day coming. Now they do nothing to usher in that day. We are becoming so impatient that we are rushing to the front line to serve notice on the world, that we are rushing to the front line to serve notice on the world, that we will not tolerate no more foolishness. Mr. Blackman, watch your step. Ethiopia's queens will reign again, and her Amazons protect her shores and people. Strengthen your shaking knees and move forward, or we will displace you and lead on to victory and to glory. she wrote in 1925. But do you hear the ADOS argument there? Where she said, white women are rallying all their forces and uniting regardless of national boundaries
That's right.
to save their race from destruction and preserve its ideals for posterity. Did you also hear the prophetic word there about the yellow race gain leadership of the world and we be forced to subservience under them or extermination? Do we not see day after day report on Instagram and Facebook about Africans being exterminated by the yellow race? See, back then everything was honest. You were black, you were red, you were yellow, or you were white. Right? So excuse the language. But people were very clear about who they were in relationship to power. And the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey, born 136 years ago to date, not only blessed us because he lived to do his divine purpose, although he was sabotaged by the Pink Tea Set Society. Have you ever heard of them before?
No.
That's the boule.
Come on.
That was the boule before we knew about the word boule.
Right.
It was called the Blue Vein Society.
That's right.
The Pink Tea Set Society. Okay? These folk were working in opposition because they felt they were colored. The National Association of Colored People didn't include half of us in here. In other words, colored represented your proximity to whiteness. They referred to, and this is why I say analyze the material, because Mother Amy and the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey left us some powerful clues about why you can't succeed in the current political dynamic systems that we operate under. It's the same systems, different names. The Pink Tea Society, the Blue Vein Society, we call them the Divine Nine. Their leader was W.E.B. Du Bois. If you listen to what he had to say, see, Black August isn't just Black Power August, because also in August in 1920, during the convention, there was some Black folk writing letters to the government of the United States saying Garvey must go, dated August 10th. So it's Black Devil August as well. And if you don't know history, you will just try to lump everybody in just because they're Black, without distinguishing what Dr. Malachi York referred to as the Black Devil, that has consistently operated to undermine all of our most powerful movements. I thank you for your time, for allowing me to just take you back through divine time and remember a little bit about how we got here. And I appreciate you so much. If you're interested in reading more about the Honorable Amy Euphemia Jakes Garvey, who could arguably be considered the vocal cords of the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey, who arguably could be considered the vocal cords of the entire Black race. Right? You can text the word Amy to 202-952-6123. I wrote an article in the African magazine that helps to shed some light. I only put the first part of this 3-part article out because nobody gave me any love. In addition, you can follow me on Instagram at Sheila Brown Speaks and Queendom Care. I'm the author of a book called The Divine Self-Care Strategy, in which I have a whole chapter devoting to the 4 elements and how our ancestors strategically used air, fire, earth, and water, also known as a few tools, to conquer health issues and freedom issues. Health and freedom correspond. And I would love to share more about my work. And there's another link on Instagram called Amy Jake's Garvey_project, where I share insights about Queen Mother Amy, about the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey, and about the connection between freedom and health. Thank you so much for
We got a little bit of time for Q&A. We can take 2 or 3 questions. If there's any questions in the audience, questions or comments.
Did you intentionally use her material as source, like a monologue, theatrical type of endeavor? Do you do other projects like that?
Yes, I do. I've memorized 3 of her articles. There's an article that she wrote in 1926 where she's literally talking about what we're going through right now. Like, if you are not clear that we live in cycles, this time, literally 100 years ago, the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey, believe it or not, created the impetus for the Chinese-American War. The Chinese-American War that literally liberated China was happening because he said, if Europe is for the Europeans, then Asia should be for the Asiatics and Africa for the Africans. So Mother Amy Jakes Garvey was trying to teach us about how it was her husband. She said it like this: it takes some big physical demonstration to make some Negroes appreciate the necessity for and worthiness of the program of Garveyism. Right? And she said, the war in China being waged right now has done it. 10 years ago, when Marcus Garvey started his crusade and informed a warring world that peace could only be brought about when each race, group, and nation learned to respect the rights of the other. And that as Europeans claimed Europe as their exclusive possession, so should Asia be for the Asiatics and Africa for the Africans. He was laughed at by some Negroes and dubbed a dangerous man by European land grabbers. Today, the slogan, Asia for the Asiatics, created by a black man, is the war cry of millions of oppressed Chinese who are letting Europeans know and feel that their home is in Europe, unless they are willing to be governed by the Chinese. Right? So she wrote an article talking about what we are literally re-experiencing right now. The Chinese studied the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey. They picked up the crumbs that he was dropping down that were intended for us, that was sabotaged by our blue vein societies, that were completely offended by his sheer presence, not by his teachings, but his features. They describe him as a black, monkey-looking, heavy jowls, beady little bright eyes. That wasn't the KKK describing him. That was William Pickens of the NAACP. The colored people did not find us worthy as black people. They were disassociating themselves. We got to be honest about this. Yes, W.E.B. Du Bois realized he was used later on. And after telling black folk in the 20s that we can't live in Africa, it's too hot over there. There's nothing but cannibals over there. Right? He took his behind over to Ghana and started espousing the same principles that the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey was saying just 40 years earlier. We got to study the history. Because when we do and we put these things in their proper context, then we understand why the NAACP is ineffectual, why they only started to embrace the concepts of mass incarceration after the sister wrote her book, Mass Incarceration, right? Why they are not concerned about the issues in a real visceral way, even though they control millions of dollars a year. Not one school, not one massive piece of legislation since Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., right? Why are they so ineffectual? Because they are today's blue vein society and pink tea society. And it's right here in this book, Garvey and Garveyism, written by a woman who made sure that her husband had access to all the news. You know, that man was going around speaking all the time. Who do you think gathered all of the international papers, and after a long day of typing and fighting the world and making sure he was protected, and him out there on the stands and going around raising money and Black Star lining this and incorporating that and factories this, that they actually got together at nighttime and discussed global politics. And she gave him the paper and said, this is what China did. Can you believe that this is what Russia did? Mm-hmm. My husband is not going to be going out in the world and not being able to articulate what's happening internationally. Who taught her that? Her dad. So when she met the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey and she started drilling him about his program for sovereignty, he was like, oh, I'm going to have to make another appointment with you, sis, because you're deep. And she wanted to know. She needed to be convicted. She wasn't a groupie. She wasn't impressed by the powerful oratory, but she was impressed by his ability to carry the intellectual prowess all the way through. Because she was a lawyer for all intents and purposes. But y'all called her a secretary because in 1920, it didn't matter if you were a counselor or if you were an accountant, you were just a secretary. That was the singular word for the work that a woman did who would become eventually a wife, right? But secretary has to be broken down. When she met the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey and he invited her to the office and he examined her and he took her around the office and she was like, my goodness, you're in trouble, my brother. You can't have the files over here like that. You can't have the financial records out here like this is a hot mess. And he was like, Queen, I got the work, but I don't have the skilled workers. Can you please come and volunteer? And she agreed to volunteer. And she came in and she set up what's called the system. You know what the system did? It was what provided him his legal defense in 1925 when he had to go before the United States court under Judge Mack and defend himself pro se. Why? Because his lawyer, if you will, his legal counselor, his accountant, his bookkeeper, his business administrator, if you will, saw all of the problems in the office and came in because she had already been around lawyers and she knew about cash controls. She knew about chain of custody. So what she did was she created a system whereby the person who gathered the mail wasn't the same person who opened the mail, wasn't the same person who stamped the mail, wasn't the same person who deposited the check, wasn't the same person who completed the register. And you know what? They hated that system. She came in there swinging that little ponytail around in the back and telling them, you're not going to be doing this anymore. You're going to be doing it. And I'm like, who does she think she is? Because she saw a problem and came to solve it because that's what she was born to do. They always send two, and the enemy sends the impersonator. Be careful, kings, about the impersonator. They're sexy, they're flashy. Same thing for the women, the men too. They come to distract you from your aim. And his aim was universal confraternity, not sorority, not the divine nine, confraternity of Black manhood. The Ethiopian confraternity with the Nigerian, with the South African, with everybody, confraternity. Not Sigma and Q, Delta and AKA, confraternity. Everybody is yours. Not just your particular sect. But I see her, she hurting, I'm hurting.
Right.
No disrespect. These institutions have become something very important to our communities. But do you know that in exchange for the soul of Black folk, when the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey was organizing a government and a military, that Black men and women were walking around in the 1920s with swords and uniforms? They wouldn't walk out the house without their uniform on. Cap, jacket, suit, ironed, all made by Black hands. This was their everyday attire. We've traded that in for the marching bands. It's not funny. It's frightening. What we have sacrificed was 100,000 Negroes, if you will, parading down Georgia Avenue, parading down 125th Street. People, white folk, they thought they were living at an African kingdom, Zamunda. They had never seen it. Uniforms, swords, Black Cross nurses, the children this big, everybody looked tight. We've traded that in for carnival and for the marching bands. They're sweet and cute, but I don't want that if I had to lose the military. In 1920, Black folk voted their flag, the RBG, red, black, and green. Before the Durban Declaration, before the Human Rights Convention. See, these folk think they're so slick. In 1920, Black folk came together in Madison Square Garden. Over 30,000 Negroes couldn't even get in the building. They voted. They created the Declaration of the Negro, the Declaration of Rights of the Negro people of the world. 46 clauses. And one of the clauses was that we don't have no respect for what was then the Geneva Convention, which is now the United Nations, because they are here to undermine our sovereignty. And just 14 years later, 7 Europeans and 1 Asian decide to get together and come up with the Universal Declaration of Rights. You think that they didn't use the Negro Declaration of Rights of the Negro peoples of the world? Everything. If we don't study, we're going to lose it. And the Queen wrote it all right in here in this little book. Pick it up and read it. I mean, like, read it like your life depended on it. Because you will find in here, let me tell you something. I'm completely obsessed with this topic. Do you know that the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey was the topic in Congress?
No, I didn't know that.
In 1923, they were having a discussion about communism, and they couldn't stop talking about the UNIA. There was a man who received a letter from the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey. His name was Senator Langford. He was so moved by what he heard. He took up time on the Senate floor. I'm going to just share briefly what he said. He said, I received a few days ago a circular letter from Marcus Garvey. Y'all ain't never heard this before, so listen up real carefully. All right? I'm going to drop some jewels on you right now. Senator Langford is on Congress bringing this before his people about this man and this movement. And he says, a few days ago, I received a circular letter from Marcus Garvey of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, which contains several ideas along the right line, as well as some at variance with my views. Listen to what he says. some Negroes advocate. Garvey says some Negroes, such as the faction of the mulatto W.E.D. Du Bois, believe that the problem will be solved by assimilation and miscegenation. At least they believe that the black race will become, through societal contact and intercourse, so mixed up with white race as to produce a new type, probably like Du Bois himself, which will in time be the real American. It is for such a contingency that he and his associates are consciously or unconsciously working. Then Langford said, here is what Garvey says about that impossible idea. We of the Universal Negro Improvement Association believe in pure black race, just as how all self-respecting whites believe in a pure white race as far as that can be. Again, Garvey says, we believe that the Negro has at least a societal, cultural, and political destiny of his own, and any attempt to make a white man of him is bound to fail in the end. Now, don't get this confused with Sheila today. This is Langford reading the letter that he received.
Yes.
This is a government writing a government, okay? A government, the provisional president of Africa, is writing to Congress. This is how serious this brother was. This was not the Boy Scouts.
Yeah.
Garvey speaks of the many political and industrial positions that the Negroes would like to hold, and then says this is Langford. This is Garvey now. All these are positions and jobs sought by the majority group of whites in America and elsewhere. As a Negro becomes more insistent on these demands for constitutional rights and privileges and threatens the more to compete with the white man for the job that the latter seeks and believes worthwhile having, then the inevitable conflict will be down irrespective of the law of the government, because the law and the people, but when the people through prejudice or any mass opinion become dissatisfied, the law and the government are no longer able to control them in their actions. In this respect, I would refer you to the industrial riots of East St. Louis and Chicago. Remember, 1919 was the Red Summer. It was the bloodiest summer. Why was it so bloody? Because Negroes were fighting back. It's only a riot when you fight back.
Yeah.
It's justice. It's the white man's prerogative to just occasionally lynch a Negro. And Langford actually talks about that in this. Okay? I'll just read this one last piece. He says, in this respect, I would refer to you the industrial riots of East St. Louis and Chicago, the political riot of Washington, and the commercial. Now, he refers to what happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma, as a commercial riot. He doesn't say it's a race riot. Listen to the ancestor. He said it's a commercial riot. We are in a fight for resources. And it's never changed. Only the names have changed. All of the issues that are going to be moving forward, as you will see, about land, water, food, and resources, right? And if you are at the bottom of the totem pole, like the man prophesies we would be, which is why he was willing to sacrifice me and his kids for the movement, which is why he was able to sacrifice his family, because it was so important to him to save his race from destruction.
Right.
We owe the sister. Anyway, it's late.
Give Mama Sheila a hand. Definitely want to thank y'all for coming out tonight. We got both of our presenters in the audience. Feel free to talk to them, build with them. If you haven't signed the sign-in sheet yet, please do so that we can stay in contact with you. Before I sign out, I want to acknowledge an ancestor, somebody very near and dear to me who became an ancestor last week. His name is Moise Luis, also known as Murder, Lil Haiti. I came up with him crossing the DC, Maryland line into Tacoma Park, Maryland. You know about Tacoma Park. It's a small community. You got the white hippies, but on the other side, you got your African immigrants, as well as your Central American immigrants. And we were always out there. About 13 years ago, he went in. Unfortunately, he didn't make it out. And, you know, writing him, I saw a growth in him. He came into consciousness before I did. So we were often talking, build, and he was building in there with some brothers as well. He was organizing for inmates' rights and all that. Real George Jackson, you know, and yeah, so got that Haitian blood in him too. So, you know, it wasn't by happenstance. And a lot of stuff that he was doing on the outside, he channeled it into something positive, man. You know, I'm just sad that he can't be here on the outside to make it happen more, but everything happens for a reason, and I honor him, I pour for him, I call his name, they ain't gonna forget it, you know. Yeah, that's him, yeah, that's my man, yeah, Moses, yup. Yeah, real Haitian brother, but you know, August 7th, State Maryland Penitentiary, you know, Maryland State Penitentiary, but we give honor to him, we give honor to George Jackson, we give honor to Marcus Garvey, Jonathan Jackson, Tula Shakur, Amy Jocks Garvey. You know, she's not gone yet, but we give honor to Asada Shakur. There are ongoing campaigns to get her name off that FBI list. You know, we give honor to Malcolm X, Harriet Tubman, Elijah Muhammad, Kurt Muhammad, Steve Biko, Nelson Mandela, Tupac Shakur. Go ahead.
Dr. Colin Muhammad, Steve Coker.
Geronimo Pratt.
Dr.
Francis Russell Wilson. Mama Betty Shabazz. Ida B. Wells.
Chokwe Lumumba.
Harriet Jacobs. Father Frederick Douglass. Booker T. Washington.
Afeni Shakur.
George Washington Carver.
Lumumba Shakur. Slade Shakur.
Muhammad Ali.
I say, oh.
Asheo.